The hidden link between sleep loss and insulin resistance, how poor sleep pushes the body toward metabolic disease. Imagine if you could temporarily push your body toward diabetes. Not by eating excessive sugar, not by gaining weight, but simply by sleeping less. It may sound surprising, but scientists have repeatedly demonstrated something remarkable. When healthy individuals are deprived of sleep for only a few nights, their bodies begin responding to glucose differently. Cells become less sensitive to insulin. Blood sugar remains elevated longer after meals, and the body begins displaying metabolic patterns that resemble the earliest stages of insulin resistance. In other words, sleep loss can quietly push metabolism in the wrong direction. But why does this happen? Why would something as simple as missing sleep interfere with one of the body's most essential metabolic systems? To answer this question, we need to explore how the body normally controls glucose and how sleep participates in that process. Every cell in your body requires energy to function. That energy is primarily derived from glucose, a simple sugar circulating in the bloodstream. After you eat, carbohydrates are broken down into glucose. This glucose enters the bloodstream and travels to tissues throughout the body. But glucose cannot simply enter cells on its own. It requires the help of a hormone called insulin. Insulin is produced by specialized cells in the pancreas, known as beta cells. When blood sugar rises after a meal, the pancreas releases insulin into the bloodstream. Insulin acts like a key. It binds to receptors on the surface of cells and signals them to absorb glucose from the blood. Once inside the cell, glucose can be used to generate energy or stored for later use. When this system works properly, blood sugar rises after eating and then gradually returns to normal levels. But when cells begin responding less effectively to insulin, a condition called insulin resistance emerges. In insulin resistance, the key still exists, but the cellular locks become harder to open. The pancreas must produce more insulin to achieve the same effect. Over time, this increased demand places stress on the pancreas and may contribute to the development of type 2 diabetes. Now, here is where sleep becomes critically important. For many years, researchers believed insulin resistance was driven mainly by diet and body weight. But as sleep science advanced, scientists began noticing something unusual. People who consistently slept fewer hours per night were more likely to develop metabolic disorders, even after accounting for diet, exercise, and body weight. This observation led researchers to investigate the relationship between sleep and glucose metabolism. What they discovered was striking. Sleep is deeply intertwined with insulin sensitivity. One of the most influential studies exploring this relationship took place in controlled laboratory conditions. Healthy young adults were asked to restrict their sleep to only 4 hours per night for several consecutive nights. During the experiment, researchers carefully monitored their glucose metabolism. Participants consumed standardized meals, while scientists measured how their bodies processed sugar. After just a few nights of sleep restriction, insulin sensitivity declined significantly. In some cases, the reduction approached levels seen in individuals at risk for diabetes. And yet, these participants were otherwise healthy. Their metabolic shift was driven almost entirely by sleep loss. When normal sleep was restored, insulin sensitivity gradually improved. This experiment demonstrated something profound. Sleep is not simply rest for the brain. It is a regulator of metabolic health. But what exactly happens inside the body when sleep is restricted? The answer involves a complex network of hormonal and cellular signals. One of the first changes occurs in the stress hormone cortisol. Cortisol plays an important role in regulating energy availability. In healthy circadian rhythms, cortisol levels rise in the morning and gradually decline throughout the day. But sleep deprivation disrupts this rhythm. Cortisol levels may remain elevated at night. Elevated cortisol signals the liver to release additional glucose into the bloodstream. At the same time, cortisol interferes with insulin signaling pathways inside cells. This combination makes it harder for tissues to absorb glucose efficiently. The result is higher blood sugar levels. Sleep deprivation also alters how muscle cells respond to insulin. Muscle tissue is one of the largest consumers of glucose in the body. After meals, muscle cells absorb glucose and store it as glycogen. But this process depends on specialized proteins called GLUT for transporters. These transporters move glucose from the bloodstream into the cell. When insulin binds to receptors on muscle cells, it triggers GLUT for transporters to move toward the cell membrane. Glucose can then enter the cell. However, sleep restriction appears to reduce the efficiency of this process. Research suggests that poor sleep interferes with the signaling pathways that activate GLUT for transporters. As a result, muscle cells absorb less glucose. More glucose remains circulating in the bloodstream. The pancreas attempts to compensate for this problem. When blood sugar remains elevated, beta cells release additional insulin. This compensatory response helps maintain glucose balance temporarily. But it also increases stress on the pancreatic cells responsible for insulin production. Over time, chronic insulin resistance can lead to beta cell fatigue. When beta cells can no longer produce sufficient insulin, blood glucose levels begin rising more dramatically. This marks the transition toward diabetes. Sleep deprivation alone does not cause diabetes, but it can accelerate the metabolic processes that lead toward insulin resistance. Another powerful mechanism linking sleep loss and metabolism involves inflammation. When sleep becomes insufficient or fragmented, the immune system interprets the situation as a physiological stressor. The body begins releasing inflammatory signaling molecules called cytokines. Among the most important of these are interleukin-6, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-alpha. These molecules play important roles in immune defense. But when they remain elevated chronically, they can interfere with metabolic processes. Inflammatory cytokines disrupt insulin receptor signaling inside cells. They essentially create noise within the molecular pathways that allow insulin to function. As a result, cells become less responsive to insulin's signals. This inflammatory interference contributes directly to insulin resistance. Sleep deprivation also affects hormones that regulate appetite and energy balance. Two hormones play particularly important roles: leptin and ghrelin. Leptin signals fullness and reduces appetite. Ghrelin stimulates hunger. Under normal sleep conditions, these hormones remain balanced. But when sleep becomes insufficient, ghrelin levels increase while leptin levels decline. This hormonal shift can increase hunger, particularly cravings for high-calorie foods. As a result, sleep deprivation may indirectly promote weight gain, which further worsens insulin resistance. Circadian rhythms also play a role in metabolic regulation. As we explored in the previous video, the body operates according to internal biological clocks. These clocks regulate hormone release, digestion, and glucose metabolism. When sleep schedules become irregular, circadian rhythms fall out of alignment. This misalignment can impair the timing of insulin release and glucose processing. Eating late at night, for example, may produce larger blood sugar spikes than eating the same meal earlier in the day. The body is simply less prepared to process nutrients during the biological night. Interestingly, the relationship between sleep and metabolism appears to be directional. Just as poor sleep can disrupt metabolism, Metabolic disturbances can also disrupt sleep. Elevated blood sugar may interfere with sleep quality. Hormonal imbalances may fragment sleep cycles. This creates a feedback loop in which poor sleep worsens metabolic health, and metabolic health further disrupts sleep. Breaking this cycle requires restoring healthy sleep patterns. The encouraging news is that the body remains highly adaptable. When sleep improves, metabolic signals begin shifting back toward balance. Insulin sensitivity can recover. Hormone rhythms can stabilize. Inflammatory signals can decline. Even short-term improvements in sleep duration may produce measurable benefits. This resilience reflects the remarkable capacity of the body to restore equilibrium when given the opportunity. Understanding the relationship between sleep and insulin resistance changes how we think about metabolic health. Diet and exercise remain essential, but sleep represents an equally important pillar of metabolic regulation. Every night, sleep helps recalibrate hormone rhythms. It allows tissues to restore insulin sensitivity. It reduces inflammatory signals, and it synchronizes the cellular clocks that coordinates metabolism. The modern world often encourages behaviors that reduce sleep. Late-night screen exposure, irregular schedules, chronic stress, yet these behaviors may carry hidden metabolic consequences. The body evolved under conditions where sleep followed consistent daily rhythms. When those rhythms become disrupted, metabolism must adapt, sometimes in ways that increase disease risk over time. But knowledge provides an opportunity for change. By understanding how sleep influences metabolic systems, we gain a new perspective on health. Sleep becomes more than rest. It becomes a nightly metabolic reset, a period when the body restores balance to the systems that regulate energy and glucose. In the next video, we will explore another crucial piece of this puzzle: how sleep deprivation triggers inflammatory signals that connect poor sleep with long-term metabolic disease. Because the pathway from sleep loss to metabolic dysfunction often runs through one powerful biological process, inflammation, and understanding that process may reveal why sleep plays such a central role in protecting long-term health.